Hey, so quickly, before the video begins, I just wanted to throw out this preface, basically, just to sort of preface what I'm saying in this video, because this was actually recorded several months ago, I think back in November last year, discussing the paid dungeons and the sort of the way that they were separated from the seasonal purchases and things like that. But I wanted to throw this out because I feel like this topic is still going to be relevant next season in Destiny. Uh, and this video actually kind of goes alongside an article that I did publish back in November last year, and I'll link that in the description. You can check that out, and it's got some images in there that I sort of put together as sort of concepts and ideas and examples. Uh, and this kind of video, it's kind of a critique of Destiny, but it's kind of also focused on, there was a lot of kind of negative kind of criticisms that were thrown around about Destiny. There were a few sort of misunderstandings in sort of various websites and things like that. Kind of covers a lot of different topics. Obviously, you'll hear that in the video. I think a lot of what I say still stands. I think a lot of it's still relevant, but some of the information might be outdated, considering this was obviously recorded during Season of the Lost, before the 30th anniversary release even came out. And I will say that I don't think what I say in terms of my ideas and concepts aren't the perfect solution, and I'm sure there's a good chance it wouldn't work for Bungie. But I think the intended sort of goals and overall sort of sentiment behind them still stand. But yeah, it's a fairly long video, so, grab a snack, drink, whatever, throw it on in the background. As with all my videos, there's no gameplay, so don't worry about having to sit and watch it. Just treat it like a podcast, throw it in the background, and go ahead. So yeah, enjoy. Hello, world, channel, people on YouTube. I'm back for like another video that I haven't done in like, what's it been, like 4 months? 4 months? 3 months? It's like back in April, I think, that I was doing this. Was it July? I don't know. It's been a while. Basically this video kind of came as a bit of a spur of the moment, kind of like, I've written an article about this topic, and I was like, kind of want to ramble for a bit in a video, kind of, give an extra way you can hear some of my thoughts, kind of thing, and it's probably a quicker way than reading what is, I think it's about 11,000 words. For some reason I wrote tons, but anyway, to get to the actual point, essentially I've written an article that's about Destiny, but it's to do with a clarification that one of the community managers came out with recently regarding the Witch Queens, the new expansions, Deluxe Edition, and the extra dungeons that are coming with it. And essentially, we already knew, like, a lot of people knew when they announced this Deluxe Edition with the Witch Queen, it was like the 24th of August, it was like, we knew what was in the Deluxe Edition, we knew what we were getting, and there weren't really any complaints. I think there was a bit of confusion, a bit of the uncertainty around the dungeons, but there wasn't really any kind of, like, major, what the hell, Bungie. But after this clarification, we found out, like, they'd actually clarified it in the Q&A on the same day they revealed it, but of course probably everyone flew over everyone's head because there was so much news and everything that just got buried underneath everything. But the clarification is that these dungeons are only available as part of the Deluxe Edition, or you can buy them separately. And that's kind of kicked off this whole kind of, like, discussion about, the way that, so it's kind of, I'll get into more of it later, but some of, like, there's journalists and writers that are being like, oh, these are Witch Queen dungeons, and they're locking it behind the Deluxe Edition, and that's not really what's happened. But I kind of just want to go through, if you've read my article, or if you haven't, I'm going to go through, like, the same kind of structure I have for that, to kind of show my thoughts and everything. And so, yeah, to me, selling them separately, I think, is a weird decision. I don't really understand the kind of idea behind that. It's sort of like, why? Most people, or at least I definitely thought they were just going to include them within the season passes. And if you don't know, every 3 months in Destiny, as most live games go, every 3 months is a new season, but Destiny has, like, a paid season pass that's like you have, like, a battle pass section, but you also get access to, like, certain activities and, like, missions every season and some quests and stuff like that. So a season pass in Destiny is a pass for that season, not, like, season pass for the entire year. And I think some of the terminology that Bungie uses is different, and it's confusing. And I think one thing that, in regards to the expansion, like, a lot of people have been saying that, like, oh, this Deluxe Edition's, like, way overpriced and it shouldn't cost as much. But I think a lot of people refer to, like, these expansions as DLCs, and Technically, that's what they are because it's downloadable content, and that's the same with like any kind of like update or any addition or any kind of thing. People call them DLCs, and I think when people think DLC, they're thinking single player. They're thinking, oh, this extra like 2 to 3 hour kind of segment, this extra story thing. That they're not really thinking expansion. And expansion is not really much of a common word used. I think some games, I think Division has used it, World of Warcraft, Witcher 3, but it's almost like it's always for these games that have like a niche audience essentially, and like I'd call Destiny, like I'd say Destiny has a pretty niche audience, except it's just a very big audience. And so it's like I mentioned Witcher 3, and well, it's like to me, it's like, well, Witcher's gonna have like when most like initially I think it would have had I wouldn't say a quiet launch, but it would have had a big enough launch. But when people really started going crazy over The Witcher, the versions of the game that existed were like the Game of the Year edition with all the content, or the DLCs were on sale, or the expansions were on sale quite often. And so I think the definition of expansion is a little bit hazy to people, and so they hear it and they think DLC. And so when they see a £35, like $40 DLC or expansion, sorry, they're immediately being like, well, that seems ridiculous, and it's a steep price, and I think that's kind of the general misconception. And so then when you have a deluxe edition that's another 35 on top of that, even though to me, like as a Destiny player, I'm like, oh, so I get the expansion and 4 seasons and 2 dungeons, like that's crazy, that's awesome, like sure, I'll pay that. Um, and I think that is some of where some of this problem lies when we're talking about the cost of the expansion and just Destiny content in general, and it is a topic I'll get more into on the the whole aspect, but specifically about those dungeons is that the thing I don't entirely like about them is that because there's just so much to buy in Destiny anyway, like currently there's 3 expansions, with the current expansion having a deluxe edition, then there's the current season, and then you can, if you want all the seasons from the past year, you have to buy the deluxe edition. And so basically, like with dungeons being sold separately, and as I said, including them as part of the deluxe edition makes sense. I think that's that. The deluxe edition's always been, to me, it's like you get the expansion and then you get the entire next year of content, and that's what it's been for. It's included Forsaken, Shadowkeep, Beyond Light. All 3 of those have done that kind of idea. Technically, even the D2 launch like base game came with all year 1 content. Um, so yeah, that's how I've understood the deluxe editions, and that's how they have been, structured. But when you're selling like separate things, like dungeons on their own, I find that's a really almost like a slippery slope. I wouldn't call it a slippery slope, but it's kind of like, in some ways, I like the idea of like, oh, if you really like dungeons, you don't have to play or buy anything else. You can just buy dungeons and raids and whatever. But the problem with that is that it's fracturing content and it's segmenting it in this weird way, and the game's already got a weird structure as it is. Like, it's a free-to-play game with, as I said, these multiple expansions. And I in my article, it's like a proper list, but essentially everything that's going to be paid now is going to remain paid, as far as we know, until this time next year, when there's also going to be the 30th anniversary pack that comes out in next month. Then there's going to be the Witch Queen with its deluxe edition. Then there's going to be the current season. Then there's going to be 2 dungeons, and it's like holy crap! Like there's so much stuff, and it's like you're expecting people to be like, oh sure, here's like £150, I'm gonna check out your game, and it's like, that's my problem. Segmenting content like this is just not. I don't think it's very attractive for the game, and I think it's a pain when you're like trying to be like, oh yeah, you want to get friends into it. The idea of the free to play game was that they were like, anyone can play it, and it's great. The fact that there's a fair amount of stuff you can play, but the thing that I mention that in this whole like article is that the stuff that you play, it's kind of weird because it's not showing you what Destiny is fully. You're kind of getting an idea of like, oh, you play the intro like quest, and then you're like, oh, so this is a strike and that's a PvP. Okay, so like, but you don't get the idea of like what is an expansion, like what is the season like. And so in this sort of long article, I basically go into the idea of like a concept, an idea of mine, where they integrate the free-to-play game and the paid stuff like better together. To preface that quickly, though, there's also another aspect which doesn't help any of this. There's the Destiny content vault, which is also known as the DCV, and basically they've got that there as a way that they can cycle content out of the game over time. when it's less actively played. And the idea is that that's to free up space for newer content. And now, so it sounds bad. I think it's one of those that, like, you like it, or I wouldn't say, I don't know, if I think it's I don't like it kind of thing. It's one of those, and I don't even think Bungie likes it. It's just for them to sustain Destiny 2, that's the way it has to be. And yeah, obviously they don't want to make a Destiny 3, and it sounds like they, I saw something the other day that said that they didn't even want to make a Destiny 2, and that was an Activision thing. And it's like, so to sustain the game and to build it the way they want to, they kind of locked into this thing where it's like, well, yeah, they're going to have to take stuff out. And it's weird, because it's like, people complain about it, and I totally get why, because I'd love to go back and play, like, old stuff. Something I do quite often, and I've done as I've grown up, is that I've played games, I've just replayed them, and it's just fun to be able to go back, and, it's like, in Destiny's case, I don't really care about the rewards. It's just sometimes like, oh, I want to replay Red War, or for lore reasons, let me just go back and check out, like, what was this about? And you can't do that with, like, all of the year 1 and a lot of the year 2, like, seasonal content. And so there's this, so because of the existence of this vault, content is then over time being taken out. And next up, we've got Forsaken, which is the year 2 expansion, on December 7th, the same day that the 30th anniversary pack comes out. Forsaken's going to go free, like the story of it at least, and they're going to replace Forsaken's purchase with a Forsaken pack that unlocks the exotics for the expansion, as well as the dungeon and the raid. And then on February 22nd, when Witch Queen launches, Forsaken's story and the Tangled Shore, like, location in the game are going. They're going out the game. And obviously that's to make way for Witch Queen and everything that's coming next year. But the weird thing to me was like, well, why is that remaining as paid? Why are we still charging for the raid and dungeon? And I get that they obviously want to monetize it because it's content that they've made. But the problem is that is now an extra purchase that someone is going to have to make. And there's no word on how much that's going to cost. There are some, like, a couple of bonuses that you get if you've already bought it, I think, but it's like vague, like, really basic things that, like, if you buy the Forsaken pack, you get 3 things that just let you instantly unlock 3 exotics, and then if you already own it, you just get 3 Ascendant shards, which are, like, upgrade material things, and it's kind of like one of those that's like, I don't really care, to be honest, like, sure, whatever, it's fine. But it is, so the DCV, the content vault, is part of the problem. And so this concept that I had kind of, like, thought about was and again, I have no idea if this is sustainable. I have no idea if Bungie can do this. I would imagine they've probably thought about something like it, but I think it would be cool to see more content rotate in as free over time, and to have, like, the way I describe it is, after 2 years, an expansion goes free, and then after the 3rd year, it then goes out the game, essentially. And that last part about it going out the game, I'm only saying that because the year 1 stuff went after 3 years, the year 2 stuff is going to be going after 3 years, so it seems like that's kind of the cadence they are working through, but they obviously consider it like, oh, have they got a planet where this certain enemy race is, and they obviously need to keep them in the game, in that sense, otherwise they have to do more work than is probably necessary. And it seems like it's a ton of work to get something out of the game, so it's one of those that's like, yeah, like I said, it doesn't seem like they want to do it, really, and I don't know why, because people complain about it, and understandably, but it's like, but if they're removing content, they're now not going to be able to sell that content anymore. And now I don't think that should be, in the case of Forsaken's Raid and Dungeon, I don't know why it's being sold anyway. But yeah, so I was like, yeah, after 2 years, expansion would go free, and then you'd have that entire year where it's free, and then when that next expansion comes out, that free expansion goes into the vault, and then the following expansion would be free, and then the following year that would be vaulted, and that kind of cadence. And so that would mean, like, this year Forsaken would have been free all year, like right from Beyond Light's launch all the way till Witch Queen. Witch Queen would release, Forsaken minus that extra, like the raid and dungeon. They would then stay in the game, Forsaken story and Tangled Shore would go out the game, and then when Witch Queen launches, Shadowkeep will go free. And then if they keep up with that, the following year, Shadowkeep and the Moon will leave the game. And so, as I said, that might not be how they plan it. They might have something completely different. Of course, it depends on the story, depends on what they what they feel like is the right thing to do. But of course, we don't know this until not long before. We only found out about the Forsaken vaulting, I think, a few weeks ago. So we're finding out like 4 or 5 months in advance. And I think that's enough time to do the stuff, but it just doesn't... there's not an expectation. We're in the unknown. We don't know what's gonna go next. We don't even know with these new dungeons and Witch Queen and like what is gonna stay in the game for, and and what's gonna stay in the game and how long is it gonna stay in the game for. And I don't think it's attractive to really be like, oh yeah, if you buy this, it then goes free, or sorry, it goes out the game within 2 years. I don't see that being like something that works well for them. But I just feel like we need more of a predictable pattern. And I think, as I said, that idea that I said about expansions, that can be extended to seasons. And so, as I said, seasons, the way that they currently work is that you have a full year, and every 3 months, barring delays, there is a new season. Which means in the fourth season, there are 4 seasons worth of content to play. But then as soon as the next expansion releases, and the next season starts, all of that seasonal stuff leaves the game unless they choose that they want to keep it in for whatever reason, which they are doing with the second season's content this year. But I was like, well, again, if you're a new player, you're not getting to see what an expansion's like. You're getting a pretty lacking intro quest that I think is fine, but I was like, it's just like, it's not the same production value that you would get from something like Forsaken or Shadowkeep or anything like that. It's not nowhere near on the same level, and I think, wouldn't it be cool to like advertise some of that to players, because then they can be like, oh, this is what an expansion's like. Oh, that's awesome. Let me buy Shadowkeep. Let me buy another expansion. And with seasons, well, they don't even go free at all. There's like barely anything that's free about a season, besides like the seasonal weapon or whatever, and the free tier on the battle pass kind of thing, which to be fair is okay. And then there's like some stuff in there. There's kind of like, it's kind of worthless in the grand scheme of things. It's not much, but it's something. But I think they could make seasons free after 3 seasons. So the way I saw, again, I've got examples and everything in my article, but I had it so that if we take the 4 seasons of this year, which is Hunt, Chosen, Splicer, and Lost, currently, because this is so, Hunt has been out now for, this is the 4th season it has been active. So as it, as a baseline, I think all seasons content should stay in the game for 12 months, or 4 seasons, basically. So that then that every season has pretty much the same amount of time in the game, as I said, barring delays. Whereas currently, the last season of the year is going to have less time than the 3rd season, which is going to have less time than the 2nd and the 1st. And that's weird to me. I'm like, well, does that then, how does that work on the development side? Do they intentionally go, oh, well, we'll make seasons, because the thing is, they want the story and all the content to be good and high quality and obviously, sell. But surely that would mean that the last season gets a bit less effort put into it, because it's only going to be around for 3 months, or in the case of Lost, it's 5 months because of the Witch Queen, delay. But it's like, actually, is it 5 months? No, it's 6 months, sorry, not 5 months, I forget. Yeah, this season's long. And so it's like, and that's kind of weird to me. So 6 months isn't too bad kind of thing, but in a normal year, it'd only be there for 3 months. And I think that was okay for last year, year 3, because the content wasn't... It was okay, but it was kind of very... There wasn't as much content last year as there has been this year. This year they've knocked it out of the park on story and activities. They've done a really good job. I don't think it's been perfect, but it's impressive. I'm blown away by what they've done. So yeah, so I think Season of the Hunt could be free this season, and then it would be vaulted next season, which is then season 16 starts. So Witch Queen's going to launch with its seasonal content, and then you're going to have Season of the Chosen will go free, and Splicer and Lost, and then Season 16 would be all playable in the game. Chosen's free, the other 3 are paid. And I also thought, if you wanted to you could, well, I would like to see them being able to buy seasons individually. That would be cool. But in the case of those previous seasons from the current year, year 4, I feel like it would be you just bundle those with the associated expansion, or if you're buying the deluxe edition of Witch Queen, if you're buying the standard or deluxe edition of Witch Queen, you're going to get them. So basically, what that would do is that if you were to buy Beyond Light in the first season of year 5, which is next year, you would then get access to you get access to Season of the Chosen, Season of the Splicer, and Season of the Lost on top of Beyond Light. If you were to buy the Witch Queen, you would then get access to Chosen, Splicer, and Lost. And if you get Deluxe, you would get those 3 seasons, the Witch Queen expansion, and then the 4 seasons and 2 dungeons next year. And that would then, you'd be like, oh, so I can play these seasons, understand the story, and then see how that ties into Witch Queen. And I don't think it would be perfect, because there's still going to be some, hanging threads, and you'd be a bit like, what's going on? But you get to understand at least the arc that things go through. You get to meet the characters, even if it's like midway through a character arc, but you at least get to kind of understand that kind of whole process and where the story's been and where it's going, kind of thing. And to me, I think that will then mean that, like, if you want to invite a friend to Destiny, you can be like, it's free to play. We don't have you don't have all the recent stuff, but what we can do is we can play the intro quest. We can then go play Forsaken, and we can check out what our season's like. And through that, they can be like, oh, I kind of like. I don't like. I don't know about seasons. I'm not too sure on that. But I like expansions. Like, okay, what expansions are there to buy? And they can go to the store, and there would be 2 expansions instead of 3. You would have Forsaken was free. You'd have Shadowkeep there, which would be a cheaper price as it is currently, and you would have Beyond Light. And obviously, as it is at the moment, you would either buy Beyond Light on its own or Beyond Light Deluxe to get everything, all the seasons, everything from this year. And that would then it keeps it simple. It doesn't overwhelm them, and I wouldn't say Forsaken's overwhelming, but it's, if you're playing the game currently, there's a lot that says, oh, you need to own this to play that, oh, you need to own this to play that. And Forsaken has a lot of content, to be fair. If Forsaken was free, we would have a bit of a better game, because Shadowkeep doesn't have tons, Beyond Light doesn't have tons, but they're very isolated to those things. Forsaken was quite a big expansion, so it extends across more of the game, whereas something like Shadowkeep, Beyond Light, they are kind of contained to their destinations, be it the moon or Europa for Beyond Light. And I think that would allow you to invite other players to the game, get them to play it, get them to check out an expansion, and they might want to buy an expansion in the future. And if they don't, well, every season they're going to have something new to check out, and every year they're going to have something like the new, the previous expansions to be checking out. And plus, it gives a year to check out that expansion and 3 months to check out that season, whereas what they're doing with Forsaken Story, they're giving 2.5 months to play the story. And to be fair, it's like, you're going to play the story, and then what are you going to do? Like, and what are the limits to what you get, kind of thing? Does that include the Dreaming City missions? Because, well, as we, we don't fully know. We've only been told that the raid dungeon and exotics access is being tied to the Forsaken pack that's going to replace the current expansion thing. And it's one of those, this whole thing's confusing, and the way that the game's set up is confusing. And I think this idea, as I said, I have no idea if it's sustainable, because they kind of have to take stuff out of the game every season, and that might be difficult, kind of thing, because, as I said, I think they've already said that it's difficult to take things out of the game as it is, kind of thing, and it might mean that the game gets bloated, but I just feel that it would allow people to be like, oh, I know that's going to be free next year, I know that's going to be out of the game the following year, but when that happens, I'll then get access to another one. And sure, I'm new to the game, like, I've got this stuff to play, and new players aren't going to understand half of this anyway. New players aren't going to understand half of a bunch of stuff, because there's so much complexity, there's so many aspects of the game. So you kind of do need a bit of either a massive manual or, another friend or someone to kind of guide you through it. But yes, that's kind of my concept. I've kind of spoken a bit about the value. I think, to me, the value of the deluxe edition and everything is fine. Like, I think there's a ton of value in it. I'll play the game way more than I'll get my money's worth of it. But I understand the steep price, kind of thing. But that's kind of what my idea and concept was is like on about to eliminate, because I think that would make the game better. I think it would be easier to get people into the game, and there'd be less stuff being like, oh, you need to own this, oh, you need to own that, kind of thing. And if you've got seasonal content to play every season, you can also understand the story, and again, the narrative might be what hooks people. People might understand some of the story and be like, oh, I want to know what happens next, how do I get the next season? And if they were to be made individually, then they could buy it outright, or they could, because they could buy a season, and they could play the season, then they could buy the next season, and the next season, and then the expansion, and then the next season, and they could do it like, a player can do it like that. And the thing is, that wouldn't bloat the storefront of the game, because of the fact that when you go to, like, Destiny 2's game page on Steam or anyone else, they have only expansions are there, and the 30th anniversary pack, whereas seasons you buy with the paid currency, that the, premium currency, whatever you want to call it, you buy it with that. So it would all be in the game. They have a timeline section which shows you the order of things. So they can offer a pretty obvious way to see what's next and to see what you should buy next. And that way, you're not going crazy over the player. You're showing them the timeline, the chronology of events, and they can use that to go, okay, this is what I should buy next. And, you know, as I said, looking at next year, we don't know if... I assume Dungeons will be a silver purchase, which is the premium currency. I assume that'll be an in-game purchase. It won't be a DLC, like, expansion style, you know, PS Store, Xbox, whatever they call it, or Steam purchase. I assume it'll be entirely silver. That's what... Because it feels like it's in the game kind of thing. Like, expansions feel like it's too big not to sell on the storefront, whereas, you know, something like a dungeon feels like it's a core thing to the game. But yeah, so part of what's kind of, you know, it kind of gave me the idea to write this entire kind of article and this video is that some of this is being misconstrued by a lot of journalists, and I'm not going to dunk on anyone, and I think Destiny's confusing, and Destiny players were confused about it, so I'm not here to be like, man, screw these guys. And I've given examples in my article, but, like, Eurogamer, Polygon, and I assume it's pronounced PC Games N, maybe not N, I'm sure what the end is, I haven't looked at the logo, it's on the logo, a little N, I can't remember what that is, but they overall refer to these extra dungeons next year as Witch Queen dungeons, which to me, and from what Bungie have said, that's incorrect. They are Year 5 dungeons, and they are included with the Deluxe Edition, because the Deluxe Edition gives you access to everything the following year. The thing that, as I said, the thing that was weird to me is that you can buy them separately, because I assumed they would be purchased within the season, you know, with the season passes. But then I was like, but you can't buy previous season passes unless you buy the deluxe edition of the previous expansion. So if they include them in the season passes without making seasons purchasable individually, you then get a position where if you don't buy a dungeon within that 3-month period, you have to buy the deluxe edition expansion. And that would be worse than what they've said here. And I still don't think this is what they said here is great, but it's like, and I think the problem is that the reason why there's so much, you know, misconstruing of information and misunderstanding is that I don't know what games these journalists play. So they might play Destiny, but to me, if you're writing about Destiny in like mainstream media, you should probably have an idea about the game. You should probably have followed it enough, because it's one of those games that you just can't see a news story and immediately jump on a bandwagon and be like, okay, I'm going to write an article. And I'm not saying that's what happened, but it feels like it is, because, I mean, the thing is, players are also like confused about all this as well. So I'm not. It's obviously a problem, and it's partly to do with how Bungie have announced it. But I wouldn't be surprised if the players that are annoyed are not even seeing it from Bungie. They're seeing it from the journalists, and the journalists saying you need to buy the deluxe edition to get this. And there are already other people that have been like jumping on that, and you know, people making YouTube videos and things like that. And it's like, it's there's a misunderstanding here, and Bungie haven't said anything yet. And I feel like they should have done. I feel like I was hoping they was going to, and they might not. You know, maybe they were just like, oh, that's false information, so we shouldn't do anything about it. But the problem is that Destiny gets so much negative press, and it's like, the game is kind of good. Like, it's pretty good, and the stuff this year has been great. And yet, they get dunked on by the masses and the mainstream media because they say something that then gets taken out of context and misconstrued. You know, you're seeing narratives where it's like you have to buy the Witch Queen Deluxe Edition to get access to the Witch Queen dungeons, but it's like, no, you either buy the dungeon outright when it releases. I assume it'll be available when it releases, because that's something I'm not sure on, is the dungeon purchase that's separate going to be available at launch? I still don't think it's a great idea selling them separately, but that's what Bungie said they're going to do. But it's not locking them behind the Deluxe Edition, you can buy them that way. Or you can buy the Deluxe Edition, you get the expansion and everything for Year 5. Or you can buy the expansion on its own, and then later you can upgrade to the Deluxe Edition and get everything. And again, it's like that price thing. It's like, well, if you don't want to pay that much money for stuff, don't buy it then. You know, I don't think Witch Queen Deluxe Edition is priced obscenely high to the point where we need to change the cost to make it lower, because Destiny expansions and deluxe editions have always ranged between like the 40 to 70, like kind of 50, 70, that kind of mark. I think Shadowkeep was 50, or maybe it was 60. Beyond Light was 60. I want to say Forsaken was 70 as well, or 65 or something like that. And Witch Queen is 70, and most games now are costing 70, and with Destiny you're going to get an expansion and the following years of content. And so yeah, the kind of general like point I come to is I just think cost is being focused on way too much here. Like I think it's totally fine to voice your opinion. I think it's fine to say like, oh, this is how I feel. But so much of this is taken out of context, misunderstood, misconstrued, all this, and it's not giving not only players that don't follow Bungie full on, you know, probably as much as I do and some other people, but it's giving the people that don't play the game this wrong message that Bungie's this egregious company just trying to get tons of money from people and be like, because as I said, the narrative is that these are Witch Queen dungeons and they are being locked behind the Witch Queen Deluxe Edition, and that's not at all what's happening. The problem is that the communication and the sudden change in how, this additional monetization thing is different, and it's not something that Destiny's done before. So we're kind of at a place where it's like, we don't really know what's going to happen. We don't know how, we didn't expect it, didn't really fully know this. And part of the problem with all of this is that I wish there was more focus being put on what I believe to be the actual issues, which are the DCV, the Destiny Content Vault and the free-to-play aspects that, if you're a free-to-play player, you're getting kind of like pretty underwhelming content, and you're not seeing what Destiny is. And I feel like Bungie must know that, but it's like, they haven't done anything about it, or at least they haven't tried to do anything. They did the Beyond Light free-to-play, like, New Light Quest or whatever, but they haven't, in this particular instance, we're going to have a storefront next year where you're going to have, like, £100+ worth of stuff to pay, and if you take a game, like, a standard game, you usually buy that for 60 or 70 every year. And Destiny is charging probably about twice as much as that for all of its content. And when you consider that, and that some of this content is older, and then some of it might leave the game, and then it might go free, and then we don't learn that it's going to leave the game and get free until close to it's gone, and when it does go free, it's not even fully free, it's part of it free, and then that gets... And it's like, it's not predictable, it's not understandable, I feel like it's clear to me in regards to deluxe editions and the way that the dungeons are being sold, but we still don't fully know all of that. But it's like, if I'm having to make, or if I'm writing a stupidly long article about this, and I'm also talking for ages, I talk for ages anyway, but if I'm talking for this long about this topic while other people, and Paul Tassi, if anyone knows Paul Tassi, he's a writer for Forbes, covers a lot of Destiny, but a lot of games just in general. He's someone that has had, I think, I sort of agree with, and he has a similar viewpoint where it's his article. He wrote an article called the dungeon situation is, as he put it, it's more about confusion than cost, and I think it's a perfect way of saying this. It's not so much that you have to pay a lot to get into the game. It's the fact that, well, that is part of the problem, to be fair. But in regards to the dungeon situation, it's not the cost. In regards to a new player getting in, it probably is the cost. If you're an invested player and you're gonna buy the Deluxe Edition anyway, nothing changes. You get everything. Like, you just shouldn't worry. And if I'm honest, considering the way people are making it sound, I'm surprised Bungie did that, because people are making it sound like Bungie have done something terribly awful here, and it's like, I just don't believe that they have. But it's not that this move is awful, it's the fact that everything in the game being paid and all this confusion is then making this new thing... Well, to me it makes the new thing seem worse, but to other people, they're focusing entirely on this new thing, and as a journalist are writing their articles, and this whole thing, it's just too confusing. It's ridiculous. I hope they change it. I hope we get some kind of communication on this soon, and I hope something changes, basically. As I said, if you've listened to me ramble for this half an hour, which is quite a long time, I didn't intend to talk for this long, then thank you. But if you didn't, or if you want to, you can go and check out a long article where I kind of go through. There's a lot of things I haven't mentioned, and I've got some graphics and things that I made in there to kind of like go alongside the kind of points I'm making. But yeah, that's kind of not much else I want to say. As I said, if you're new to Destiny, I would say if you're new to Destiny, like, in fact, if you're new to the game, or if anyone's played it recently, leave a comment, and I should have said this at the beginning, but leave a comment and let me know what you think of the game, what you wish there was, how you is it confused? Is it too confusing? I imagine it is, because they also throw you into missions as well. Like, you can start a character, play for a bit, log out. Next time you log back in, you're thrown into Beyond Light's first mission. And it's like, when I'm new to the game, that's perfect for me. I'm like, great, this is exactly what I want to do. But for a new player, they're going to have no clue what's going on. But anyway, leave a comment, let me know what you think of this whole thing, and let me know what you think if you've just played the game. If you're wondering about how Destiny's been, it's been pretty great this year. It's a shame about all this other news, but I would go to official Destiny sources for this kind of news and to understand clarification, or to at least look at Bungie's official store pages, because I think that the kind of, all this misconstruing and this understanding, it's creating a narrative that's not even real, kind of thing. So, and I think it's difficult for non-Destiny players to write about the game, especially in mainstream media, and they're going to make waves, because they're going to, loads of people click their articles. Popular sites like Eurogamer and Polygon, they get tons of views, I assume. So, yeah, it's a shame that this has kind of happened the way it has, because, I think I think that, as I said, there's a lot of good in Destiny. It's not recognized for that fully, and in this particular case, I don't think the right issues are being focused on because people are so hung up on something that doesn't even exist. This kind of this you know, I was gonna make a joke, and I might still do it for the lols. I was gonna put in the title like "You've been lied to," and I'm gonna like put in the thumbnail and like make it like a proper YouTube. You know, but I'm now a YouTuber, and I put a red arrow and everything, circles around stuff. I'll put a shocked face on the thumbnail, do everything. But that's something, yeah, it's, as I said, and it's no disrespect to the writers here, you know, they're doing their jobs. I just feel like this wasn't that difficult to look up and read, and I get if some things are confusing, but they have never called these Witch Queen dungeons, as far as I'm aware, and they've always called them Year 5 dungeons, so I don't know how it's how it's spiraled out of control into this thing that doesn't even exist. But yeah, I'm going to stop talking now. Thank you if you've listened for this long. Thank you. As I said, this kind of goes along with my article. You can read it fully if you want more information or hear more of my thoughts. Check out my website, check out my Twitter, follow me on Twitter, do all the usual things if you want to do them. Leave a comment, tell me what do you want, you know, put a random, you know, put a smiley face in the comments. If you were this far, put a smiley face in the comments. I feel like people might have got bored of me by this point, but if you have, then if you haven't, and yeah, put a smiley face in the comments. But yeah, I will see you all later. Hope you have a good day. Hope you've all been well. I apologize for not making videos and doing anything as per usual. Not that I'm a proper YouTuber, I think I write more than anything. I'm rambling. I will let you go. This is the end of the video, and I will see you next time. Ciao, ciao, ciao.